The whistle. It's done. It's over. It is over. Trinidad, with nothing to play for, has dethroned the United States, knocking them out of the World Cup 2018.
On October 10th, 2017, the United States lost 2-1 to Trinidad and Tobago on the final day of qualification for the 2018 FIFA World Cup that saw the Americans fail to qualify for their first ever World Cup since 1986. The result sent shockwaves throughout the soccer world, from various soccer fans and different Americans alike, as a nation that has seen the sport grow tremendously since qualifying for 7 straight World Cups since 1990, failed to do so in what clearly was the biggest opportunity for U.S. soccer to capitalize to a nation of 320 million people on the biggest stage possible, the World Cup that summer in Russia.
Gloves should have been off years ago. We should have been having real criticism. And the discussion after Brazil, Max, was can we beat the Colombias and the Belgiums and the Argentinas of the world? You kidding me? We can't beat Trinidad on a field that's too wet and too heavy? What are we doing? What are we doing?
The elimination from the World Cup made many people skeptical on the idea that soccer would never make it into this country, which has resulted in a near 40-year odyssey for acceptance as one of the top sports in the country. For all the critics that have viewed it as a sport that is too foreign, too rich, too boring, or any other stereotype to those involved in the sport, they thought the elimination from the World Cup was where the hype bubble was finally about to pop. Well, here's the story on why that's simply not true. So there are many ways to dissect the reason as to why the United States did not qualify for the World Cup, but let's start with the positives coming out of it. It's definitely been much more of a success for the United States in this new century. As of May 2015, over 24.4 million people play soccer in this country, and in 2017, Gallup reported that soccer was the third most played team sport in the US, behind only basketball and football. From the professional level, soccer in the United States has achieved huge amounts of popularity from different mediums. With more than 2 decades of existence, Major League Soccer, the professional league in this country, has improved in quality and popularity. But it's the accessibility of other leagues around the world is where the sport has gotten its most fans. Mediums such as Facebook and Twitter, TV channels such as beIN Sports, ESPN, NBC and Fox, YouTube channels such as Copa 90, and many other forms of mediums have been super important for the next generation of fans to interact and digest their daily dose of soccer of the major leagues such as La Liga in Spain, the Premier League in England, Serie A in Italy, Liga in France, Bundesliga in Germany, Liga MX in Mexico, among many others. So what do the people involved in the sport have to say about this? I conducted my research and spoke to 3 closely connected figures in the soccer media world from 3 different backgrounds to talk about the fundamental reasons as to why the sport has celebrated this popularity as we head into the end of the decade. I went to New York City FC's headquarters to speak with Arielle Castillo of Manchester City, who has always had an influence from soccer.
On a professional level, I worked as an entertainment journalist actually for a few years, and then several years ago I went to work at a cable network startup that was sort of aimed at English dominant Latinos is how it first started out, and at the time it was all hands on deck, and so there was a weekly soccer show, so I ended up contributing to that, and so that was sort of my first professional experience covering soccer regularly, I would say.
For people like LuisMiguel Echegaray, however, the story is not only about passion and love, but also the support inherited from family.
It's kind of like, just being, a child of, parents who were so passionate about the game in the first place, being Peruvian, many immigrants, many Latinos obviously use soccer as a #1 sport, and that, I was no different. It was the first sport that I learned, the first sport that I fell in love with. And through the years, it became more than just a passion. I wanted to actually be a professional soccer player.
For women like Gabrielle and Amado, though, it's not just having that big passion for soccer, but to have it used as a drive to make a career out of it in an industry that is rising more and more each day.
Say, oh, I want to be a soccer reporter, and that was a really strange thing. They didn't really understand it. Oh, so you want to cover all sports, and I think now if I was to go back to school and say, oh, I want to be a soccer reporter, now they would understand what I'm saying, because now they see someone like Rebecca Lowe, who's on NBC Sports, and that's something that's watched by millions and billions now. And they see Kate Abdo on Fox and Turner's coverage. And so I think now maybe they would understand what I was saying a couple of years ago a little bit more. But back in the day, not many people were watching or even knew that was this mega industry. And I think now it definitely is.
There have also been some claims in regards to how soon it will be before soccer will surpass sports such as basketball, baseball, and even football as one of the top 3 sports in the nation. This is due in part to the new generation of fans between the ages of 18 and 30 and even younger, getting their consumption at a much faster pace due to the accessibility, but also due to the globalization and popularity of the top players in the world, who are becoming symbols of sports, but also pop culture.
And I think because of the number of immigrants and immigrant children that, and the diversity of this country that has kept growing, now you're combining all those factors into making now the sport of what it is.
Chances are that you will end up rooting for a team that will have players from all over the world. It's like I have friends from every continent because of this sport. I have good friends from countries that I never thought I would have good friends from. And you cannot help but learn to build some empathy, because even if you think you might feel a certain way about a larger issue, it's really hard to then, as a human being, to then be not cool to a person on an individual level, I'll say.
I think there's just a lot of little layers that maybe your typical American fan isn't normally or accustomed to following, but once they do, they realize, wow, this game's pretty incredible.
However, one of the negative things about the sport, among many things, is the high cost of playing the sport. Former U.S. goalkeeper Hope Solo said that soccer in this country has become a rich white kid sport, and that the sport's high cost at a youth level is detrimental to the, quote, state of the game and alienates so many communities, including Hispanic, Black, rural, and underrepresented. These claims have become noticeable, and there are ways to fix it, according to our experts.
The biggest issue to me is that there isn't enough. What can we do to go into these communities and find these kinds of players? Because they're not all going to go to college, or at least they're not going to go to the colleges that you think they're going to go to. And they're not all going to play academy. A lot of really good high school soccer kids in different areas are playing. So to me, it's about building a bigger communication.
I think there's definitely a perception that soccer is a rich kid sport here, and I think it goes back to what a lot of the USSF presidential candidates campaigned on, which was this pay-to-play concept. And I think that it does play a role, which I think it's so interesting because in other countries like Brazil, like Portugal, Argentina, soccer is a poor kid's sport because all you need is a ball and you can play it on the street.
And other professional teams are running academies that are free to attend for people whose talent has been identified, and or who run scholarships. So right now we are a unique country in that sort of expensive youth clubs are still a source of a lot of scouting for college scholarships in particular, because college is so expensive here, which is not a situation that happens in a lot of other countries, that a lot of the youth soccer pipeline is still around getting a college scholarship, just because that is such a huge expense for a lot of people.
There has also been the argument on the minority identity with trying to support your family's national team over the national team of your country where you were born and raised in. A key example would be Monterrey player Jonathan Gonzalez, who was developed under the U.S. soccer system but ended up playing for the Mexican national team due to his family background. While some have viewed it as a negative thing, having the best of both worlds, in fact, is something that makes the sport even more unique in the country for the fans that are being put into the scenario.
No, these are our parents. That's where they were raised, and so they brought that to our household. So I think it's only natural that you feel a connection, maybe even support a national team that you were raised in. Yeah, we were raised in this country, but we were raised within four walls that still have connections to our family's home country, and so I totally think that that's natural.
If you are first, second generation American, you're always going to have a soft spot for the country that your family has roots in, but that doesn't make you less American.
That's what happens to the majority of us is that we almost don't even feel sometimes that we belong to either, and at the same time we feel that we belong to both. And it's a very natural thing for everybody to go through.
Despite all the negativity the sport has gotten recently, LuisMiguel, Arielle, and Gabby all agree that the sport is here to stay and that the best is yet to come. meaning that the fans should be ready to continue to ride this wave for quite some time, while new fans should really start to take notice.
This game is huge in America. It's gigantic. In certain demographics, it's the biggest. And it's only growing little by little because of its diversity of its people, because of the attention and the digital accessibility, because of the participation situation, because of more stadiums being built, because there's more women playing it, there's more men playing it, because now we're finally realizing that the pay-to-play system is not right, because US soccer needs to wake up and accessibility, have accessibility to underprivileged communities. All these reasons are why this game is not only big here, but it will become in a top 3 sport in the country.
There's someone for you, there's a team for you on either of those ends of the spectrum. And at the same time, it's such a global game. I think it's so unique in that wherever you go, you can talk to someone about it. You may not have anything else in common, and this sounds so corny, but you can talk to literally anyone in the world about soccer, probably. And they'll have an opinion on it, even if it's bad, whatever.
I would tell them that it is time to hop on the train, that soccer really is the greatest sport in the world. It's the only sport that brings the entire world together.